Okay, we are going to get started with Ayse Bucak. She is the author of The Trojan War Museum and Other Stories, which was awarded the 2019 Spotlight Award by the Story Prize and shortlisted for the 2020 Penn Robert W. Bingham Award for a debut story collection. She is an associate professor at I tried so hard to get your names right, it never pronounced Florida, at Florida Atlantic University. Welcome, Ayse.
Thank you. I actually go by my middle name, but I wanted to be in on the A writers, so I'm flying with Ayse tonight. I'm going to read the beginning of the title story from my collection. So this is the Trojan War Museum, just the first couple pages. The first Trojan War Museum was not much more than a field of remains. Dog-chewed, sun-bleached, and wind-blown bones, some buried, many burnt. But the Trojans prayed there, mourned their dead, told tales of their heroes, asked penance for their mistakes, pondered their ill fortune, poured their libations, killed their bulls, etc., etc., etc. There were not a lot of Trojans left, but all the same, they hoped for a better future, and they believed in the gods, so they made sacrifices. Children, cattle, women, you name it. Enter Athena, motherless daughter, virgin, murderer of Hector and Ajax and Arachne, at least a little bit. The dead added to the dead, she said. What did they expect us to do? Whatever the Trojans may have expected or hoped for, the gods did nothing. The first Trojan War Museum was abandoned after a flood, a fire, an earthquake, not necessarily in that order. The dark came swirling down, the city disappeared, again. Sing to me now, you muses, of armies bursting forth like flowers in a blaze of bronze. Soldier, I begged for sleep, and if not sleep, death. I was willing to settle for death. Then again, I've never felt more loved. He looked at his father, a veteran, his grandfather, a veteran, his uncle, a veteran, his sister, a veteran, and he saw his future foretold, no different than birds and snakes foretelling 9 more years of war. Think, museums turn war to poetry. So to poets, so to war. You know, Athena forgot Odysseus was out there. Oh, muses. The second Trojan War Museum was built in approximately 951 BC upon the site of the first Trojan War Museum after Apollo, boy, man, beauty, sun god, far darter, Daphne, destroyer, and lover too, looked upon the empty plain dotted with the same old bones, more bleached, more burnt, more buried, more chewed, and declared it a ruin of a ruin and a dishonor. They are forgetting, he told Zeus. We must make them remember. Zeus, master of the house, lord of the lightning. You're not wrong, Zeus said. A museum run by gods is unusual, of course. Ares argued for an authentic experience, and so there was a room where 1 in 10 visitors was killed, and another in which vultures and maggots devoured the flesh of the rotting dead, while dogs licked up their blood, then turned upon each other. The second Trojan War Museum did not last long. The dark came swirling down, again. Soldier, I had a more ordinary war. I feel lucky, really, though sometimes when I talk to other soldiers, I feel like it wasn't a real war, and so I'm not a real soldier. Think, would you rather be told how to use what you've got or be given what you want? Think, would you want Achilles' choice or wouldn't you? Think, glory? History, a place for tourists to visit. But what else could it be, really? The ever-present present? The third Trojan War Museum was built on Mount Olympus.
I think we should put them back out in the,
The third Trojan War Museum was built on Mount Olympus in the approximate year of 602 BC, when Zeus, suddenly angry at the shifted tides of man's attention, gathered to the cloud-white mountaintop those Trojan War mementos that were readily at hand. He was never one to go out of his way. Known first as Zeus's Museum or Zeus's Junk Drawer, the collection only evolved into what came to be known as the Third Trojan War Museum under the guidance of the more circumspect Athena, gray-eyed woman warrior of wisdom. The museum labels provided insight into Athena's opinions. Achilles' armor, for example, was identified as Odysseus's armor won from Ajax after the death of its former owner, Achilles. The last item listed in the culmination of Athena's display was noted only as horse, wooden. Historians joke that Zeus brought the horse to Olympus in 22 pieces, and Athena put it together in 20, just to show she could. Visitors were naturally limited to those with access to Mount Olympus, and so there were none. Enter again Apollo, literally, into the belly of the great wooden beast. Night and day and night, Apollo lay inside, golden knees curled to golden chest, as if he did not consider himself alone, but rather crowded in with the men who had last huddled there, plotting brutality for the sake of civility. Apollo was interrupted only once when Poseidon, splitter of the sea, cracker of the coast, brother to the boss, popped his head up and in, swiveled it round, looked upon his nephew, and withdrew without comment. Some historians believe Apollo's equine confinement to be the mere equivalent of a teenage boy shutting himself in his room. Who is to say, given immortality, when a god hits puberty? But he had with him a long scroll, the first written record of Homer's war, and he was studying it, particularly his own place in it, per Homer. When finally he exited the belly of the ersatz beast, he went straight to his sister of sorts, the curator, goddess Athena. The poet has made fools of us, Apollo said, except maybe you. I'll look into it, Athena said, taking the offending scroll from Apollo's hand. Soon after, on his own pilgrimage to Delphi, where, after all, should a god in search of himself go, Apollo posed his thought as a question. Has Homer made fools of us? The oracle replied, the immortal is all. And though he should have known better, Apollo heeded the words and not their meaning, taking comfort where it was not offered, at least for a while. I'm going to stop there.
Okay, well, thank you. That was great. Okay, our next reader is Ambalila Hemsell, the author of Queen in Blue. She is a recipient of the Kundiman Swanee Fellowship and a former writer-in-residence at Inside Out Literary Arts in Detroit. Her poetry can be found in Fairy Tale Review, the American Literary Review, and elsewhere. She lives in Tacoma, Washington. Welcome.
Thank you. That was great, Ayesha. And I switched one of the poems I was going to read because you had a description of swirling darkness, and I had a swirling darkness in a poem, so I swapped it in. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be reading with these other folks. I'm really excited to be reading on Earth Day, which is my favorite day. All of my poems, all of my work, all of my poems are love poems to the earth. Every single one of them is a love poem for the earth. And that means they're also love poems for humanity, which is part of the earth. So I'm gonna start with some new stuff. Yeah. Hydrangea Blue. Oh, season of tangible desire, season of blue hydrangeas. This season hits my body big with hummingbirds, bang big, big and hungry as morning. The sea I live on is quiet and cold. In it, the octopus dreams in full color. You can't not call that God. You can't imagine it. You couldn't possibly imagine the way the volcano drifts in and out of the cumulus. This beach with ice cream and bouncy castle, this party we are on the periphery of, this woman with gold earrings and blue eyeliner. I blush, muscle down. I am a sailor waiting for wind. I am holding all the aces in my hand. The bush produces 100 spheres, each bluer than Billy, bluer than blue. I don't know who to call about this. I move like an octopus, slow and full of limbs. I grab a bunch of hydrangeas and stuff them in my mouth just to get them out of sight. My eyes can hardly process this blue, but my body was built for it. That poem and the next one I read are in the most recent South Carolina Review, so that's cool. Sex in the Anthropocene. Open and on top, I thought, we will be happy and full of oceans. We will make like the gods and run. I pictured the porcupine fish, serendipitous balloon. I thought, keep your poison close and your lover closer. And like this, I lived sweetly in the aquamarine. Then I came like an angel, giant wings spread wide above you, all the while resisting the simple circle rolling forward, the unstoppable wheel. Overrated future, serrated future, old bread knife of a future, future of no softness, no bumbling, no beech nuts, touchless future, future where all the gold is wrapped into circuitry. Where is the blessed, weird ocean? The porcupine fish, the goddamn porcupine. Where are the quills and where is the squid? I want to write a love poem. Beloved, you are holding my hand. Between our palms is a light. Hold tight. This is my book. It came out last March, so please buy it. Terra Machina. Fleeing our desiccated planet, all implosions and dust, the cool star we used to orbit, our failing gravity and insufficient gods, I follow you into the next nebula. Medusa of stars in violet and copper, the violence of combustion, etc. We fall a long way, descend to a sphere turning round, a sun burning still, a planet that can really hold you to it like a mother does. I wander on, pressing my toes into crumbling, pitch black loam city of worms, fertility, fertility, a richness born from eons of decay. We know this place, the golden record having landed in our forebears' long claws. I pause, get lost in this broad web of ships, machines humming through the night, fairy tale like spinning straw into gold. All day, battery acid sweat, stinging, exhausted circuit boards, field after field of servers, forever solar panels, farm rows, titanium, cadmium, some elemental metallic churning. A planet abandoned, the body unnecessary, those who chose flesh long gone. Ecstatic, we claim this good fortune cookie. Oh, sweet molten center. Oh, branching of rivers. Oh, blue, blue, blue sea brimming with toothy silver bestiary. You turn around to hear me calling. It's a home we can make here. We can make this work. All right. The next poem was published last year in April in the an eco folio that Wildness Journal did, and they did a poem each day for Earth Month, like an eco poem each day for Earth Month. Party poem. Celebration is a peculiar thing when the darkness comes swirling in like a cosmic soft serve. I don't know what birds will call to my sons, or how they will know an omen from a climate refugee. Perhaps in the end, migrations are the only signs worth reading. I spend every meteor shower wishing they will see a path unfolding. I take them to the woods to practice. See here the faint trail lined with fiddleheads. Fiddleheads, I tell them, are ancient. They have been here almost forever. We are throwing parties as if they were breadcrumbs for the way home, as if doom wasn't the sure end to our feeble human story. I can't stop loving glitter, no matter what the science says. My teenage brain remembers too well the ecstasy rendered world. I must keep my joy where I have it. My heart wanders and returns, It outruns coyotes and owls. It rides out a thunderstorm in a gully. It knows where to come when it is hungry. I feed it descending arpeggios and your steady sailboat faith. After all, we were only animals. Forgive us, boys. We were caught in our own machines. Two more. One new one and one more from my book. This is the new one. Foxglove. Of course I am in awe of it, the foxglove. My own day glow, death purple, birth purple, inside the belly of the whale purple, blood deep, blood river. I make the future tangible and human. I make little parts of the living planet. Inside the belly of the whale was wall-to-wall plastic, coated in purple belly juice like it was a party. Perhaps the foxglove was never mine. My legacy sings. It runs down the beach. It says, beach, beach. It speaks. It blinks and stutters. It catches the light. It slips off the driftwood and disappears. The mussels go on collecting lead. The gooey ducks with their explicit heads. There are slivers of sunlight cutting through. Raccoons peek out, hungry and hungover as teenagers. Yellow eyes in a dark green place. Tree trunks slick, split and salted, a pocketed world holding itself secret, slug and toadstool. A world I am erasing, even as I write it down, even as my loves run through it, wearing their blood and their thirst on their sleeves. All right, last one. Alaska. Whenever my grisly stories come up, I tell the one about the mother, her 3 cubs, her 3 bluff charges. Asked if I was afraid, I dodge, say, this is what you do, walk backwards, speak to the bear, show her you are bigger than she thinks. The truth is, in those days, I did not know how to be afraid. But some years later, I too became a mother. I want the boys to see Alaska, Denali and tundra, a bit of earth uninterrupted. I'll teach them to blow their whistles and sing loud, look out for scat, and no matter what, never turn and never ever run. Even the mother bear can be reasoned with. But here, I hear the news and my breath just goes. Another senseless, another childless mother, another bullet. The fear knows that I am large. I charge and charge and charge. Thank you.
That was terrific. Thank you. Our third reader, you all are fast. Our third reader is Ananda Lima. Ananda is the author of the poetry collection Motherland from Black Lawrence Press and 3 chapbooks, Translation, Amblyopia, and Tropicalia. Her work has appeared in the American Poetry Review, Poets.org, Kenyon Review Online, Gulf Coast, and elsewhere, and she's also a member of the Writers' Conference staff. Welcome, Ananda.
Thank you so much, Leah. It's so great to be here. Thank you all for those beautiful readings. That was so great. I was trying, like, I could not figure out the alphabetical order in person. And so I usually don't read on the screen like that because it freaks me out a little bit, but I couldn't manage all the devices. So I'm going to try it today. Now, just imagine that everybody's having a good time. I hope that works. So I'm going to read a few poems. This first one is very much a sort of last year poem during the early pandemic times, and it's called Mourning. I dreamed I was a Spanish onion, no, red. And when I sliced myself above the eyebrows, my insides were white, so orderly, my structure, concentric, the circles of the dead trees. These days I wake aching. You never know if it's due to age or pandemic. Can't remember when it started. I don't cut onions anymore. Can't take that smell lingering on my fingers. I try to be gentle with my eyes. Now, when I stand by the sink, is to hear the soft crescendo of water filling glass. And think of when you slice it the other way, how it can look like the red inside, muscles on a tie. So that was morning. All right. So this next one, I wrote just before the election. Yeah, so I was doing, I homeschool in general. So I was also homeschooling this year, like many people. And I use these manipulatives for math, like there's little cubes and things. So that comes in the poem. And it's called Geometry Lesson Before the Election. We have a white ruler, flat tiles, square, inches red, blue, and other colors spread on a plane. Between him and I, we are building a transition from line to area. We'll just do the same again, I tell him, like we did when we started. I show him how the squares are made of lines again. We pile them into a tower, watch the emergence. Cube out of square, out of line. Sitting still, we let the three flicker somewhere inside us. I hold my picture and try to do the same again to see how to add time to a model. I think camera, complete darkness or dark enough for an open shutter. The strobe building out of repetition, like flat square tiles repeating themselves into a cube. The strobe repeating my son and I into a zoetrope strip. Now and before, like here and there, I make myself consider. Here, me looking at him, tracing his pencil along the ruler, there he is, putting down the first tile, the strips piled, I make myself consider, all still, all already there. Me almost writing 2016, when dating this now, already gone. Tuesday, waiting for us, already gone. The tower disassembled, the ruler already put away. Good. Let me see if everybody's still there. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to read a couple of poems from Amblyopia. And this chapbook is very much a very sort of nuclear project that I did based on this experience I had in the past year and a bit with my son. So we both have this condition called amblyopia, which is kind of like lazy eye. And I knew I had it and I knew he had it, but it was only recently that I discovered sort of how deep the effects of this can go. And the whole chapbook is about that. So I have a couple called amblyopia, and this is the first one. Amblyopia. I close my right eye, meu olho direito, and see everything, tudo, que my mother, my father, meus pais didn't know to do then. Not a matter of laziness, the doctor says. It's more of a suppression, a lack of focus. Think of the right eye as a bully. Think of the left eye as too weak to fight. Think of the two eyes unable to work right together. And I was left, grown, done with the plasticity of a body that is still building, a gift said not to last, and I was left with a speckled Super 8, the grainy film, the faint dark surface of an old mirror. All right. Here's the second amblyopia. I learned to delight in gifts of myopia, the smudged edges of buildings in the distance, glass freeing itself from thinning outlines, the peach pink sky blended with its reflection. So cute how I never know where I am. Tilting my head, twisting my map to match the names, the grid I contain in my squint. How I hold a pen to tell what's right. How I guess from the phantoms what is left. I could laugh the faint lavender fragrance, my condition a pastel tinged party trick. Watch me get lost in my vapor. Watch me get by until it thickens into clouds, condenses down into my son's eyes. Yeah, I was, yeah, people who know me, like Gwen knows this, I go to Suwannee, like, and I don't know where things are. Like, I'm like, how do we get to the French house? And it's like, I've been going there for years. I don't know. So I always thought it was like just my quirky personality. But apparently it can be a side effect of the whole eye thing, which was just mind blowing to me. But yes, yeah, it was very interesting to find out that. Okay, so I have my next one is also part of the same project, and where is it? Okay, and while my son and I have been doing a lot of vision work, we do like these therapies, but it affects his reading, so I have to teach him how to read. I have a background in linguistics and stuff, so it works, but I have an accent, which gets in the way. So it's interesting, we navigate this sort of the auditory and the visual kind of imperfectly. So this one is called A Orelha e o Ouvido. And just one thing to know is that there's the word ear, like year 2020-21 year, and then there's the ear, right? This one, I know they're different, but I really have to think about it and stop to hear the difference. And this is about that. A orelha e o ouvido. He shows me the difference between ears and ears in vain. I say that we have two words for it in my language. Mine and his too, I correct myself. This one word for the outside, bare skin, curled blind baby mouse. Another for the inner part, just ours, which nobody sees. He says there are two ways to say it in English too. Index finger to a side door to his brain says inner, bends his ear as if to say see. Cartilage, a great closing argument. I say, yeah, but that is not the same thing. And what I mean, stumbling, is it's the same word in English. I say it slowly, ear. Right. Okay, so let me see. I was going to, yeah, I'll do that. I mean, between reading Earth Day poem or Tropicalia, let me see. I'll do the poem. So I was going to read from the chapbook coming up in fiction, but fiction has too many words. So I'm going to read the poem to also sort of resonate with the work that was read tonight. That was so beautiful. And also there's a whale there that came up from the poem too. This one I read in Suwannee once, and I'll read it again tonight for Earth Day. And it's called In-Flight Entertainment While the Doomsday Seed Bank is Breached. Two references. One is the Doomsday Seed Bank that got breached a few years ago that contained all the seeds. They ended up fixing it, but it was a bit freaky when it happened. sort of melting ice breached it. The other one is, this refers to that movie Ice Age, which really freaks me out. All right. In-flight entertainment while the doomsday seed bank is breached. My son's face is blue with a soft light of ice, age falling on his round cheeks, the voices in the animation contained by the cups of his child-sized earphones, muffled by the shush of turbans, so constant, so similar to the soothing sound of waves, we forget the aggression of their volume. On his screen, the body of a desperate little mammal is repeatedly crushed by gravity, rocks and metal, the creature still unable to reach the nut as its head smashed between two stainless steel plates, its eyes bulging out of their sockets, and my son laughs. He understands what is expected of him now. In this type of movie, there are always good guys who always win. When we walked in the dim amber light in the National History Museum, surrounded by bones, we were told we're the sole survivors, the lonely branch of the human family tree, because of our superb adaptability. And we chose to differentiate ourselves from the dead with a postfix, sapiens. The picture of the global seed vault in the Arctic made me think of architecture and the architect who said, "A vida é sopro," life is a breath. At that speed, the floor of the poet's green room is damp, now wet, now water covers the wrought iron feet of the bed where she sleeps with her lover. And water fills the Natural History Museum, and we float above the tallest of bone structures. Our heads tilt against the ceiling as we drink from the mouth of a whale, the last sliver of air. And I hum and hold my son's hand and think of the cow carcasses in the drought-cracked soil of the Northeast. The walls in China, Germany, Palestine, the barbed wire walls around my mother's condominium, and the futile future walls sprout one after another in an accelerating stop motion video, then blur, then crumble. And soon there'll be no need for green camouflage uniforms. Gone will be the beautiful armament celebrated in the old news. Gone is music. Gone the green of money and the green of poetry. Gone the paintings and recordings in museums. Mathematics gone. Long gone have been architecture and those seeds in the abandoned coal mine in the Arctic. On the colorless surface of the moon, imprinted in its sterile dust, undisturbed by wind or water, there will always remain a footprint. But for now, I turn my screen to a map of our journey, our airplane tiny, surrounded by blue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananda. That was terrific. Our last reader is Alysia Sawchyn. Alysia Sawchyn is a features editor for The Rumpus and currently lives in the DC area. Her debut essay collection, A Fish Growing Lungs, was published by Burrow Press in June 2020 and has been longlisted for the Believer Book Awards. Welcome, Alysia.
Hi. Thanks so much. This is my first book, and it came out in June of last year. So yes, please do buy it. Here it is. I actually have not yet been to Sawchyn. So I was supposed to go last year. I don't even know what time is anymore, but I was supposed to go last year. So I'm eagerly awaiting to see you all in person. I am going to read a short piece from the book. I don't think you really need to know any context before I start. Yeah, I don't think you need any context before I start, except to maybe say that if you've ever spent any time in the Midwest, or if you've watched Parks and Rec, like you're a deep Parks and Rec fan, there's this town called Muncie. It's like 80 miles north of Indianapolis, and it is a dark, dark place. Yeah, so this is called Unsent. We don't look alike, but set against the backdrop of that small Midwestern city, we could have been sisters. I nicknamed the town White Misery, population 68,000, for the dirty snow piled high as the streetlights and strip mall parking lots and packed into ice on the unplowed roads. How did we end up in such a place? It was more livable the rest of the year, but even in summer, potholed streets dug their hungry teeth into our car and bicycle tires. The asphalt cracks worsened each spring as the ice thawed, seeping into crevices and refreezing. When I first arrived in the city, I lived with a local who told me stories about its history. He said it had been one of the most segregated places in the nation. In high school, he said he could draw a line down the middle of the lunchroom and would be split into black and white halves. I don't know if this was hyperbole or not. I think he meant to charm me, or at least to explain our home, but instead my distrust of the sprawling soybean plants and aggressively gorgeous sunsets deepened. A few days into a gig waiting tables at a restaurant, I was approached by a coworker. I'd noticed her. She was brown and thin, and her hair was all tight ringlets. "Are you mixed?" she asked. "Mixed?" I echoed. It was like a David Ives play. "Yeah, mixed," she repeated. "Yeah, mixed," I said. She clapped her hands. "I'm not the only mixed girl anymore." I must have smiled. A year later, when I met you in that downtown bar with fried pickles and a surprisingly good beer selection, I flashed back to that echoing exchange. Might you and I become friends based on nothing but vaguely similar features? Dark eyes and hair, skin that took well to sunlight, rounded noses, high cheeks, exotic women, affinity based in isolation. To write down all the times I failed to defend myself while living in the Midwest would take longer than I have energy for. The town wore me down until the sounds of train horns no longer woke me at night. Our first semester teaching, one of my students, a redhead who had, before this moment, impressed me with his wit, said about you, "She reminds me of an Eskimo." "What?" I said. "You know." He made a gesture to indicate a large hood bundled around his face so that only his eyes and nose were visible. My face moved all by itself, but no sounds came out. He held his hands up, palms out. "Oh, wow, okay," he said. It didn't start well, did it? I'm still much less than I would like to be. I wrote my first letters when I was 10, maybe 11. Do you remember those gel pens from the 90s? Offensively bright and hard to read and pink and lime green. My left hand smudged the ink as it moved across the page. Email had begun to sneak into its position as the best way to communicate across oceans, but I was sentimental even then. If glass bottles could reliably traverse the Atlantic, I would use hundreds. I find the physical shaping of letters more romantic than the tap, tap, tap of a keyboard. It takes more effort, which says something disconcerting about my ideas of love. These early life letters were sent to a friend who'd remained at home while my family moved overseas. In retrospect, we didn't like each other much, but we had the same birthday and were at the age where such synchronicity suggested that we should be friends. I haven't learned much, it seems. When we next saw each other, it was summertime and we were just shy of teenagers and fully immersed in hating ourselves, growth spurts, hormones, scrunchies. We stopped writing soon after. I remember her face, her broken heart best friend necklace, and the stories that circled later of how she developed an eating disorder and been taken away. I wanted to be just like her. I hope she's well. I hope you're well too. It wasn't just our facial features that were the same. We shared other traits I wouldn't admit to having. For example, the way we loved men. First, we picked the ones who loved us solidly, and then when we'd become bored, we'd seek out others for whom we'd shatter ourselves, trying to get their attention. We waved our arms, stamped our feet like little girls crying out. To watch you break yourself open upon the altar of another human being was difficult. I know it was harder for you to do it, and I'm sorry I still struggle with stepping outside myself. Seeing your wanting was like staring into a mirror. To distance myself, I kept a running list of our differences. The particulars aren't important. Its purpose was only to convince myself that I was better than you. I wanted no reminders of the woman I used to be, the woman I worried I could become again if presented with the right set of circumstances. In rehab, my drug counselor told me to write a letter to a person whom I deeply resented. I instead immediately began to resent my counselor. She was a pale woman who wore bright pink lipstick and cut her dyed black hair into a severe page boy. The point of the assignment, she claimed, was the writing, not the sending. The idea behind this practice is an old one, parsing complex emotions by their articulation. In the case of written expression, a person can literally see their thoughts instead of merely thinking them, which may enable a more balanced perspective, as if looking at a pair of glasses rather than seeing through their lenses. Of course, I didn't write the letter. The next time I saw my counselor, I glared at her over her desk and acted like I'd learned something. The leather chair squeaked beneath my fidgeting. 11 years later, this is what I know. Writing exposes the weaknesses in our thought patterns, what we take for granted, and also surprises, what we didn't know we were hiding from ourselves. I was not ready to look at myself the way I'd curled up around my bitterness. That letter remains unwritten. Did they try to make you do this too? I bet they did. Do you remember the night you came over and rolled around on the living room carpet? It was an uncertain shade of taupe and matted with cat fur and litter, but you didn't grimace. Your commitment to self-destruction was both familiar and admirable. You talked nonstop without saying anything, typed paragraph-long replies to concerned commenters on your vague social media posts, chewed painkillers, roll, roll, roll. Was this before or after the accident, before or after you disappeared into a psychiatric facility? I can't remember. Was it sometime between the two events? Or am I mixing up your story with mine? I wanted to throw you out of my apartment and into the summer sky, into the stars and the soybean fields. Instead, I retreated to my bedroom and shut the door. Have I ever told you about the time I swallowed too much Prozac with a few mouthfuls of Crown whiskey and told the boy who'd hurt me that I'd taken more of both? How I walked miles through suburban neighborhoods, through woods. Of course, I haven't told you this. I ran through oaks and pines, hoping I'd trip over a root and break a bone. Every time I fell, my hands and knees caught just right, though. The survival instinct runs too deeply in me. My palms were barely scraped. Eventually, I caught a ride from a stranger sprawled in a driveway, and he drove me to that boy's best friend's house. I'd sleep with that best friend when I arrived, maybe that day or another, but wouldn't tell the boy himself, which you'd think that would be the point, wouldn't you? To fuck his best friend and then tell him to wound him. But I kept the secret. I worked the grit that settled in my chest over with bile until it shone like a pearl, a second heart that hurt, but I guarded nonetheless. After a few years of this all grown up, I took a deep breath and cracked open my ribs to show off my secret. My bravery was less than I'd anticipated. The boy, by then all grown up too, told me he'd known a long time. Now you know too. I now send and receive more letters than I can count. The last one that came in the mail was tied with red satin ribbon and a fake miniature rose. A surprising number of people are as sentimental as I am, and we have found each other. I have received through personal correspondence, among other things, a small piece of a European city, whole bean coffee and a hand grinder, shake, this was an accident, a teddy bear wearing a shirt expressing love for the United States Air Force, a zine whose cover features a picture of my friend in the bath, blueberry jam, a Che Guevara cap with a note saying I was to wear it only indoors, and a pretend monocle. I don't keep everything, but I wish I could. I'm amazed by these tokens, how they move from one place to another, ending with me. I think the word I am looking for is gratitude. I am grateful, though it has taken me years to unearth the feeling from beneath the garbage. I'm talking about the real stuff here, not the bullshit we say when we're scared and locked up so the counselors and doctors will leave us alone. I'm talking about the gratitude that comes after the suffering, after its attendant bitterness and remorse, the gratitude that lets us look and see. Thanks.
Thank you. And could everyone unmute and join me in a round of applause for our terrific readers? Thank you so much, everyone. That was really wonderful stuff. Questions?
So if you have a question, there's sort of two ways to do it. If you'd like to answer, you would like to ask the question yourself, go ahead and just use the little raise hand feature in the chat, and then I'll call your name and you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question. If you would rather have me read it, go ahead and just post it in the chat, and I'm happy to do that. And thank you so much to the 4 readers who read tonight. That was absolutely amazing. And don't worry, Ananda always finds her way to the French house in the end, so it all works out.
The French house, for those of you who haven't come to the conference yet, is where we drink. So many people want to find their way there at some point in the conference.
And I'm always finding my way there because I work there. Right.
Ananda is one of the people who serves the drinks, as I once was, and Gwen once was.
Well, I can start as people sort of ponder what questions they might have. Oh, I don't even have to. Norris, another staff member, leaping in. So Norris says, an Earth Day commemoration question for everyone. How does the natural world inform your writing / life?
I think I'm the least. Yeah, go.
No.
I can't see where the voice is coming from. So I think I'm the least qualified, so I'll try to make it short and open too. So I've been more of a city person throughout my life. And my son loves the forest and nature. That's just like his thing. I love it too, but I'm more sort of an amateur. But and we moved here to Chicago, and there's like the prairie, and there's also sort of in American poetry and literature, there's a lot of references to things that to me were just sort of book things. And so now I'm very, very interested in that very question. So thank you, Norris, for the question, because it's kind of part of me being part of his world, and that is coming through a lot in my work now, as a person who is sort of trying and learning a new beauty from his experience of the land. So that's where I am now.
I can just say briefly, I mean, as a fiction writer, the physical world certainly comes into every story, and the conversations that are happening in my workshops right now have to do with, if you're writing the present or the future, can you write a story that doesn't take on climate change? Would it even be ethical too? So I'm thinking a lot more about that. I almost read from a different story today, because I do have one story that's much more overtly an Earth Day story, but the beginning of that one didn't seem as interesting. So I do live in South Florida, so that landscape can't help but act on you. I'm pretty near the ocean and the Everglades, and there's a lot of I'm a nervous person. I find it very threatening living in Florida, but it's amazing. So that, of course, that impacts my imagination, because it's sort of an extraordinary world.
I think for me, it's like the foundation of everything I write. And like, it's also it's like a religious kind of level of connection for, like I grew up in the Southwest and in South India, in like Colorado and in the tropics. And but wherever I am, I think the place that I am is like the place that I'm writing from. So like the poems, you know, I've lived all over the States and all over the world, and the poems that were written in any given place are like grounded in that place and rooted in that place. And so they will, you know, the poems that I wrote in Michigan will have the Michigan flora and fauna in them, and, you know, et cetera. So yeah, I do think it is my sort of, it's like the way that I'm oriented by nature. And so it's definitely the sort of main spine of my writing as well.
Oh man, I now I'm like, oh, I should have spoken before you. So I actually have a hiking essay in this book. It's like a hiking / cocaine essay. So so that's why I didn't read it. But I wrote much of this book in Florida and in Tampa, and the heat very much appears in it, in part because I was always outside smoking. So not so much that book project, but my current one that I'm working on is, I think it's a herbarium. It's basically like flower micros. And I've just been spending like tons of time in like old botanical texts and like going outside. And I've always been obsessed with flowers, but have like zero aptitude for growing things. And so I've started to really like dig into like the study of it. So yeah.
Alysia, have you
Thank
ever
you.
read The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert?
Sorry, say that again?
I read The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yes.
Yeah. After that, I had never looked at moss the same way. So if for those of you who don't know that book, it's a historical novel about a woman, I think she's born in 1800, who becomes a botanist with a particular interest in moss. And then the book is full of these really elaborate descriptions of moss but you know, old botanical drawings, etc. Yeah, so that book kind of changed my life in that it made me love moss.
Well, and actually, so that I have a question for the other readers as well, because this is what I'm curious about, if that's okay, if I'm allowed to do that. So I haven't like written anything this past year because I've just been like inside, but so I've been reading like a fiend. And so I would love to know what books everyone's been reading, if they're able to read, right? And like, where have you been, I guess, finding that nourishment?
I've been reading a lot, actually. I mean, I teach too, like a lot of you, and so some of it's for school, so some of it's the old like standbys, which are reassuring. But a book I really loved this year was the novel Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu, which is very innovative with form because it uses a screenplay structure. And then Bestiary by Ming Chang, I want to say, is also a novel that I loved, really innovative with form.
I have been reading a lot, but I have to look at what I've been reading because I can't recall. Yeah, I'm reading now the Disordered Cosmos, which is a very, very cool physics book by a Black scientist, and it's just gorgeous. And I'm going to bring this up because I remember in a reading like last year, bringing up that I was reading the End of the World book, another pop physics book that was the end of everything cosmologically speaking or something like that. And it made me feel so calm, and like I was just so happy when I was reading that book. And I think this book is a great pairing because it's not just about the end, but it puts you in this very large scale where you can relax at least for like a few minutes about like just even time scale that we live in, or even human beings existing at all. It's not like I do that all the time, but last year it has been very intense. So I like this like very big picture books throughout the year just to sort of give me a break for a little bit.
My favorite thing I have been reading tons of books too, and I actually just got into audiobooks. So now I'm just like reading when I'm folding the laundry and doing the dishes and taking a walk and like just all the time. So that's been a great new like addition to my reading life that I never did before. But I love reading. Actually, like my like pure pleasure is like evolutionary biology articles in like the New York Times or NPR. Like they're always so cool. There was this thing about ants recently and like ant communication. There was this thing about like they discovered this new skeletal information about how giant flying dinosaurs like supported their huge necks, like stuff like that just really like makes my day. But the best, I think I reread The Plague, Camus' The Plague this year, and I loved Camus as like an angsty teenager and hadn't picked it up really since then. And it was an excellent pandemic read. It was so, I really recommend revisiting it for like context and reflection on just like how people deal with the thing that we're dealing with right now.
That's wonderful. Thank you all. I did not assign my students Carmen Marie Machado's inventory this semester because I thought, is it time for plague stories, or are they going to really like this, or are they going to just choose not to come to class? I didn't know which way they were going to break. If I don't want to force any other questions, but if you have a burning question, now is the time to speak up. Otherwise, we can just thank our wonderful readers for such a great reading tonight. Oh, all right, thank you guys so much. This was just absolutely wonderful. So you know, and we can't.
Thank you, everybody. That was great.
Yes, thank you. You were all terrific, and thank you for bringing the Earth Day theme in too.
Yes, thank you so much.